There is a war going on, a spiritual war, a war between truth and deception. Only one thing cuts through all the lies and opinions of man. It's the truth of an ancient book. It is God's word. It is God's sword.
We've got 2 more chapters left of Jeremiah. Chapter 50 and 51, both of those chapters are dedicated to the judgment that is pronounced against the Babylonian Empire. Lesser, smaller kingdoms have been prophesied against by Jeremiah. The prophecies that Jeremiah wrote would be fulfilled. And the interesting thing is that most of the judgment that we have read in the previous few chapters would come in the form of the Babylonian, conquest of the entire region. But then, when God is done using Babylon, God will judge Babylon, especially judge Babylon for what they did against God's people, God's covenant people. But there's more here, actually, there's more, because what you're going to need to know is that Babylon is, it's an ancient reality. Babel was the city established by Nimrod, and they had its tower, its ziggurat, that was sort of a temple and an observatory of the heavens, and they, post-worldwide flood and the judgment of God in the days of Noah, there were a few that followed the leadership of this guy Nimrod, and they built a city, and the city with a great aspiration, and they said, let us make a name for ourselves. There is a sense in which Babylon continues all the way through the history of the world, all the way through the history of the age of man, anyway, and human governments. And Babylon is real. The empire itself, the one that we'll read specifically about, built its greatest city, and really the larger region was Chaldea. They are referred to frequently as the Chaldeans. Their most significant city and sort of the capital of the whole kingdom was Babylon. But it was built on the ruins of Babel. The prophecies that we're reading here would ultimately be fulfilled. Babylon would be conquered, and it would be conquered in 539 BC. The irony of the conquest is that it happened so different in some ways from what we'll read in this prophecy. The conquest of the Babylonian Empire by the Medes and Persians under King Cyrus happened in a way that was so unexpected. That's certainly unexpected to the Babylonians. Their massive walls were never breached. They weren't sieged. There was no siege, no cutting off of supply. They were just simply taken, almost with ease. The way Cyrus, the Medes, the Persians, under Cyrus, diverted the Euphrates, they dug canals. The arrogance of the Babylonians, they were just so confident in their might that they just went to party. And inside the walls of Babylon, it was one great, big, stupid Mardi Gras. You can imagine the chaos, of that kind of revelry, drunkenness, massive festival. Babylon was so great that much of the outer sections, like New Orleans or some other, modern cities or ancient cities are divided, that is, up into various quarters. Whole sections were taken, conquered, and the party just went on and nobody even knew it was happening. The city was so massive and so great. The party also, the festival, was such that It took a long time. People were conquered before they even knew they were conquered. But the very fact that there are things here in the prophecy we'll read that it didn't fit the description, a few things, of what happened in 539 tells us exactly what we will read in Revelation chapter 17 and 18. That, in other words, Babylon's story is not over. That Babylon was, in fact, defeated, and ultimately it came to ruins. It became a wasteland. There was, of course, the real low-rent attempt by Saddam Hussein, who really wanted to be Nebuchadnezzar. He made an attempt to rebuild the city of Babylon, but I'm telling you, it was really just, it was janky. It was sort of a joke, and it came to nothing. There were friends of mine who, when Iraq was invaded, let me know that they were inside the portions, even the palace, that had been sort of hastily rebuilt by Saddam Hussein. Some even sent me little bottles of very fine sand to let me know it was from Babylon. That was cool. But the ultimate judgment, I maintain, some of what we'll read here didn't fit the description of what happened in 539 because it is for yet a future destruction. And there's a much greater destruction of a much, in some ways, greater Babylon that is going to have a worldwide effect. I believe the kingdom of Antichrist. As a matter of fact, I happen to believe that the Antichrist himself will attempt, and to some degree succeed, in rebuilding Babylon. That there will be more than one sort of capital. I think it's very reasonable, as some have sort of postulated, that there may be because this final world government, this is again after the rapture, during the tribulation, a world government comes to power, one world government under Antichrist, and it will be a combination of government, and religion, and economy. I think it's very likely that empire will have both a sort of civic or governmental capital, but it'll have a financial capital and have a spiritual capital. I wouldn't surprise me at all to discover that there were 3 very significant cities, of which I'm convinced Rome is one. Anyway, I'm saying all of this, we haven't even started reading it yet, but I'm just saying that we'll go from chapter 50 and visit Revelation chapter 17 and 18, as I'm just making the case that there's a whole lot more judgment for Babylon than what was fulfilled in 539 BC. There's another Babylon, or another version, a revived Babylon. And man, God is going to judge it more severely than even ancient Babylon. Jeremiah chapter 50. The word which Yahweh spoke concerning Babylon, the land of the Chaldeans, by the hand of Jeremiah the prophet, declare, and make it heard among the nations, make it heard, and lift up a standard. Do not conceal it, but say, Babylon has been captured. Bel has been put to shame. Marduk has been shattered. Her images have been put to shame. Her idols have been shattered. The land of the Chaldeans, this great city Babylon. But their primary gods are going to be humiliated. You got to understand that they mocked the God of Israel, Yahweh, when they conquered Jerusalem, when they destroyed the temple. They took the people of God, the covenant people, captive. God, again, allowed it because covenant people, violated the covenant. They experienced this great defeat. But ultimately, what goes around comes around. Ultimately, live by the sword to die by the sword, and Babylon will experience the utter humiliation of their gods. Bel is one of them, Marduk the other. Bel was the title of the storm god Enlil, and Marduk became the head of the Babylonian pantheon in the 2nd millennium BC. And he received the designation of Bel also, which again, ultimately, Bel means Lord in their terms, in their pagan religion. I don't know if I should or not, but I don't know a whole lot of Hebrew. I'm no Hebrew scholar. I trust the scholars. And a word is used. It's not the word normally used for idol in what we just read in verse 2. Her images have been put to shame. Her idols have been shattered. The word given there, the Hebrew word, we translate idols, can be translated balls of excrement, or in more frank terms, pieces of crap. And that's exactly how God sees the idols of this empire and all empires. Verse 3. For a nation has come up against her out of the north. And by the way, that is the general direction of the region of the Medes. That particular region today, Iran, Kurdistan, it will make her land an object of horror, and there will be no inhabitant in it. Both man and beast have wandered off and have gone away! Exclamation point. In those days and at that time, declares Yahweh, the sons of Israel will come, both they and the sons of Judah as well, and will go along weeping as they go, and it will be Yahweh their God that they will seek. And they will ask for the way to Zion, turning their faces in its direction and saying, Come, in order that they may join themselves to Yahweh in an everlasting covenant that will not be forgotten. There's a prophecy that has a degree of fulfillment, just like the judgment of God against Babylon, a degree of fulfillment, but it has yet a higher degree of fulfillment, yet future. The weeping, Zechariah chapter 12, the prophet Zechariah speaks of the same kind of weeping and lamentation, even mourning of the Jews. When the second coming of Christ, he reveals himself to them. Verse 6, my people have become lost sheep. The shepherds have led them astray. They have made them turn away on the mountains. They have gone along from mountain to hill and have forgotten their resting place. All who came out against them have devoured them, and their adversaries have said, we're not guilty, inasmuch as they've sinned against Yahweh, who is the abode of righteousness. Even Yahweh, the hope of their fathers. You know, the sad thing is, not only have their adversaries and pagan empires made that statement, we're not guilty, it's right that we should. They turn their back on God. The sad thing is, there are adversaries of Israel within the modern church, and have been for a very long time, saying essentially the same thing. Essentially, God's done with them. They turn their back on God. He's had it with them, and whatever happens, man, there are Christian people actually even today, even in the state of Maine, believing the lie that Israel is morally wrong. Israel and every Christian who supports Israel is guilty, sharing in their sin, this so-called genocide that isn't happening, by the way. Genocide. You call it genocide to fight a war and beat your enemies. Israel has fought a war for the last couple hundred days against a terrorist army that had taken over Palestine, and that region of Gaza. And the Palestinians have been their hostages and remain that. Israel is eradicating Hamas. But even now, even right now, there are churches being divided in our state by emails circulating and people taking this profoundly ignorant and ill-informed position that, God is against the modern state of Israel. That God's against them. And they're guilty. They're just guilty of all this stuff. And the sad thing is, I don't know if I've said it to you recently. I'm pretty sure I did. There are no news sources reporting the so-called genocide that aren't Hamas. There's no embedded journalist inside Gaza. Every single thing you hear, everything being reported out of Gaza is a lie being told by liars who are committed to the extermination of the Jews and another Holocaust. Man, do you believe that testimony today, for our Senate with regard to anti-Semitism in this nation, being on a university campus and seeing signs that say the Holocaust wasn't that special. Testifying today before our Senate, those signs are in our universities. Unbelievable. So this here, what God sent, all who came out against them have devoured them, and their adversaries have said, we're not guilty inasmuch as they have sinned against Yahweh. As if God was against his covenant people. Yes, he allowed Babylon to conquer them, and he allowed them to be, he'll mention that, but his covenant. See, something you got to contrast here in Jeremiah chapter 50 is the woe and the total judgment coming down on Babylon and the hope that God continues to give through the prophet to Israel, covenant people. Verse 8, the cry goes, wander away from the midst of Babylon and go forth from the land of the Chaldeans. Be also like male goats at the head of the flock, for behold, I am going to arouse and bring up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the land of the north, and they will arrange their battle lines against her. And from there she will be taken captive. Their arrows will be like a warrior who makes one childless, and who does not return empty-handed. Chaldea will become a spoil. All who take her spoil will have enough, declares Yahweh. So this massive empire and this great city would fall and would be completely robbed, spoiled. Verse 11, because you're glad, because you exult, O you who plunder my inheritance, because you skip about like a threshing heifer and neigh like valiant steeds. Your mother will be greatly ashamed. She who gave you birth will be humiliated. Behold, she will be the least of the nations, a wilderness and a parched land and a desert. Because of the wrath of Yahweh, she will not be inhabited, but she will be completely desolate. Everyone who passes by Babylon will be in desolation and will hiss because of all her wounds. It really is actually a remarkable thing. In fact, I don't know if any of you took the time to watch it, but you watch all of Expedition Bible episodes that Joel Kramer has produced, and they're all available on YouTube. You will find one that he actually visits the ruins of the Tower of Babel. And he will show you, take you there and show you what a desolate wasteland, just brush. It is nothing but what I guess a Mainer visiting would call pucka brush, except it's desert, just as the prophecy here says. Verse 14, arrange your battle lines against Babylon on every side, all you who bend the bow. Shoot at her. Do not be sparing with your arrows, for she has sinned against Yahweh. Raise a loud shout against her. On every side she has given herself up. Her pillars have fallen. Her walls have been pulled down, for this is the vengeance of Yahweh. Take vengeance on her. As she has done to others, so do to her. Cut off the sower from Babylon, and the one who seizes the sickle at the time of harvest. From before the sword of the oppressor, they will each turn back to his own people, and they will each flee to his own land. So all of the captives that have been gathered by Babylon, escaping, fleeing. But these words that you just read about our pillars have fallen. Walls have been pulled down. Her walls were not pulled down in 539 BC. In fact, it seems like time did more to destroy the city of Babylon than the conquering Medo-Persian army. So there's more. Again, we'll go to Revelation here in a minute now. Show you. There's another Babylon who will be utterly destroyed, whose walls will be completely torn down. Verse 17, Israel is a scattered flock. The lions have banished them away. The first one who devoured him was the king of Assyria, and this last one who has broken his bones is Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. So first the Assyrians taking the northern kingdom, and then the Babylonians taking Judah, the southern kingdom. Verse 18. Therefore thus says Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I'm going to punish the king of Babylon and his land, just as I punished the king of Assyria. You will remember the king of Assyria. The king of Assyria died a dreadful death in the house of his God, murdered by his own sons. We read that as we were going through Isaiah. Verse 19, and I will return Israel back to his pasture, and he will graze on Carmel and Bashan, and his desire will be satisfied in the hill country of Ephraim and Gilead. So indeed that did happen, and God allowed the Jews to return. They returned, they grew again, only to be exiled again in 70 AD. But at the end of the last, actually the end of the 19th century, they began to return. During the 20th century, they were reestablished as a nation, and they continue to return. As a matter of fact, the returning has been accelerated by the worldwide hatred of the Jews that has revived. In verse 20, in those days, and at that time declares Yahweh, search will be made for the iniquity of Israel, and there will be none for the sins of Judah. They will not be found, for I will pardon those whom I leave as a remnant. What an amazing thing. Now, listen, I believe, God speaks of pardon in these terms, that he will actually pardon Israel. There are prophecies, again, I cite the New Testament, Romans chapter 11, that only Israel will be saved. That God has a plan. And that God is going to send his son, second coming, he will reveal himself to the surviving Jews after the judgment of God, the great tribulation. They'll experience forgiveness. But take comfort in the 20th verse, you guys, because this is how God does his pardoning. How about you think about your own sin? Think about the things that you wish you had never done, that you wish you could go back and undo, that you knew were wrong, that you know now. You know better now how wrong they were than you did then. Do you think God just says, you know what, tell you what, I'm not going to punish you for it? No, God actually removes it. He doesn't just not punish you and leave it on your record. God removes it. He does this. I will pardon those whom I leave. When God does pardon, the sins are gone and they cannot be found. Can't be found. They're gone. In verse 21, against the land of Merathaim, go up against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod, put them to the sword and devote them to destruction, declares Yahweh. Well, it's an interesting thing that these two, one of them sounds like a Jewish name, does it not? Merathaim. It's the eem that makes something plural, but that's not. It's somewhat accidental, but these two cities actually sound like Hebrew words, and it's kind of a cipher. It's kind of a code. One of those cities, although it's a Chaldean word, but it sounds in Hebrew like double rebellion. So it's an interesting play on words that smarter people who really dig into the language have noted. God said in that end of the 21st verse, and do according to all that I've commanded you. Verse 22, the noise of battle is in the land and great destruction. Now the hammer of the whole earth has been cut in pieces and broken. So that is what Babylon had been, in a sense, the hammer of the whole earth. The tool used to smash other nations, including Israel. Now the hammer of the whole earth has been cut in pieces and broken. How Babylon has become an object of horror among the nations. In verse 24, I set a snare for you, and you were also caught, O Babylon. But you yourself did not know. You have been found and also seized because you have engaged in conflict with Yahweh. Conflict with the God of Israel. Yahweh has opened his armory and has brought forth the weapons of his indignation, for it is a work of Lord Yahweh of hosts in the land of the Chaldeans. Come to her from the farthest border, open up her barns, pile her up like heaps, and devote her to destruction, let nothing of her remain. Put all her young bulls to the sword, let them go down to the slaughter. Woe be unto them, for the day has come, the time of their punishment. Let me read you one little piece of commentary. According to the historian Herodotus, Cyrus, leading the Medo-Persian army, captured Babylon by diverting the Euphrates, as I mentioned earlier. The Persians attacked Babylon so unexpectedly that when the outer areas of the city had been already taken, those at the center did not realize that they were even captured. They just continued to party. It has troubled some scholars that Jeremiah 50 and 51 predict the violent destruction of Babylon, whereas its defeat by Cyrus in 539 BC took place without battle and with no damage to the city. But with other predictive prophecies, if a fulfillment does not occur in one period, it is to be sought for in another and future one. With this, I absolutely agree. This we just read in verses 26 and 27. Man. Verse 28 says there is a sound of those who flee and escape from the land of Babylon to declare in Zion the vengeance of Yahweh our God, vengeance for his temple. Summon many against Babylon, all those who bend the bow and camp against her on every side. Let there be no escape. Repay her according to her work. According to all that she has done, so do to her, for she has become arrogant against Yahweh, against the Holy One of Israel. And therefore her young men will fall in her open squares, and all her men of war will be silenced in that day, declares Yahweh. Behold, I'm against you, O arrogant one, declares Lord Yahweh of hosts, for your day has come, the time when I will punish you. The arrogant one will stumble and fall with no one to raise him up, and I will set fire to his cities, and it will devour him on every side. Okay, that violence, overthrow, didn't happen when Babylon was overthrown. So it is future. Let's see if we can do this and hold your place there in Jeremiah chapter 50. We'll come back to the 33rd verse, but go to Revelation, last book of the Bible, chapter 17 with me. Something, let me just read it to you. And again, we're reading here something written by the Apostle John on the island Patmos in the 1st century AD. And John is a long time after the fall of ancient Babylon, and he sees this depicted in Revelation 17, verse 1. Then one of the 7 angels who have the 7 bowls came and spoke with me, saying, "Come here, and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed sexual immorality, and those who dwell on the earth were made drunk in the wine of her sexual immorality." He carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. And then I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and of the unclean things of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. Well, that's pretty heavy, Mystery Babylon. So something different. The Legacy Standard Version translates it. It was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. I tell you, there's a sense in which Babylon represents all of humanity's utopian, sinful ambitions. And they will be briefly realized under the reign of this Antichrist. There's a lot more to that. And I actually believe that the woman who rides the beast is a reference to a false church, harlot. But the connection to Babylon is a reality. I believe it also involves the actual Babylon, something rebuilt there. John, in verse 6, "And then I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered greatly. And the angel said to me, 'Why do you wonder? I'll tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction. And those who dwell on the earth, whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will wonder when they see the beast that he was and is not and will come.'" The beast is the Antichrist. And there is a harlot, a woman who rides this beast in John's vision. And I believe it's a false church. Oh, and that false church has been existing for a long time, but it's really coming together at an accelerated rate now. Christianity in the West has been so corrupted. There's a new kind of Christianity. I often speak of it as that church that has traded a cross for a rainbow flag. There's a whole different version of Christianity coming together. And certainly, is being aggressively led by this current Pope of the Catholic Church. There's a woman riding this beast. The beast is, again, the Antichrist. She's rising to power with her association with this world leader. Verse 9. He's the mind that has wisdom. 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. So I'll be honest with you, I really believe that woman is a reference to Rome. The Rome. 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits on. There's only one city on earth that is known as the city of 7 mountains or 7 hills, and that is the Vatican. And I actually believe the Vatican is going to, on the other side of, especially on the other side of the rapture of true believers, which would take any true believer out of the Roman Catholic Church system. The system itself and all of its machinery and this organization will stay intact. It's not going to suffer great losses from the rapture of true Christians. The true Christians raptured out of the Catholic Church will be raptured from mission hospitals in Uganda, Sudan, and such places as that, not the Vatican, the corrupt Vatican. But then what happens is all the rest of Christianity, which is right now being pulled, there's this really sinister pull, not just to globalism nationally, but religiously. And I happen to believe that Rome has a role to play in that false one world church. It will come into league with Antichrist, the beast. Verse 10, and they are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is. The other is not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. And that's an interesting riddle I wish I had time to dig into. But it speaks plainly of the Antichrist. And he will continue a very little while, a little 7-year reign, 3.5 years of which are terrible. And when you think about how short 7 years is, and that's really short. I mean, I say that as an old guy. You can't say that next to our kids' church about how short 7 years is. 7 years is nothing anymore. To me, it's such a fraction of what so many of us have lived. But in light of empires that have risen and fallen, do you understand the rise of Antichrist is a blip? But it's the final offense of humanity against God. I mean, it's so brief. It's so pathetic, actually. A little while. He must remain a little while. Verse 11, the beast, which was and is not, is himself also an 8th, and is one of the 7. He goes into destruction. The 10 horns, which you saw, are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. These will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them because he's Lord of lords, King of kings. Those who are with him are the called and elect and faithful. And he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and crowds and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw are beasts. The 10 horns which you saw and beasts, well, these will hate the harlot and will lay waste to her and make her naked and will eat her flesh and will burn her up with fire. So there's a weird league that forms between this one world church, false church, sort of a Chrislam sort of thing, which is already existing. And it comes into a great political power of the Antichrist, but then the Antichrist turns on it and destroys it. Verse 17, for God gave it in their hearts to do his purpose, both by doing their own common purpose and by giving their kingdom to the beast until the words of God will be finished. And the woman whom you saw is the great city, which has a kingdom over all the earth. All right, now John continues, after these things I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. And he cried out with a mighty voice, saying, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. And she's become a dwelling place of demons, and a prison of every unclean spirit, and a prison of every unclean bird, and a prison to every unclean and hateful beast. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality with her. And the merchants of the earth have become rich by the power of her sensuality. I believe here there's a reference to a different city than the one in chapter 17. While Babylon is still used as code for this is still one world empire. But there's another, I believe, another city that will be built, a rebuilt version of Babylon. And it is going to experience such destruction. Verse 4, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. That's ironically what we just read in Jeremiah chapter 50. But it's different. It's for another time. It's different. In Jeremiah 50, there's a reference to the captives of Israel coming out and returning to the land. But here, man, this is different. Come out, because destruction is coming. So you will not participate in her sins and receive of her plagues. For her sins are piled up as high as heaven. And God has remembered her iniquities. Pay her back even as she paid, and give her back double according to her deeds. In the cup which she has mixed double for her. So there's an irony here. These are so very similar to the words that Jeremiah prophesied. What she did will be done to her. It's going to happen again at the end of history. before a new age, kingdom age, a better time. Verse 7 of Revelation 18. To the degree that she glorified herself and lived sensuously, to the same degree give her torment and mourning, for she says in her heart, I sit as a queen and I'm not a widow. I will never see mourning. The same kind of pride that ancient Babylon had will be expressed again. For this reason, in one day her plagues will come, pestilence and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire, for the Lord God who judges her is strong. This sounds a whole lot more like the violent destruction prophesied in Jeremiah chapter 50 and 51. Kings of the earth who committed sexual immorality and lived sensuously with her will cry and lament over her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance because of the fear of her torment, saying, woe, woe, the great city Babylon, the strong city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth cry and mourn over her, because no one buys their cargo anymore. Cargo of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen, purple and silk and scarlet, every kind of citron wood, and every article of ivory and every article made from precious wood and bronze and iron and marble, cinnamon and amomum and incense and perfume and frankincense and wine and olive oil, fine flour and wheat and cattle and sheep and cargo of horses and carriages and human beings and human lives. This world empire will deal in slavery along with all the other commerce. They will deal in human lives, trafficking in humans. It's made quite a comeback in the world, post-Christian Western world. Slavery. There are more slaves in the world right now than there was when Rome as an empire was at its peak. And half of them are in the sex trade. Verse 14, the fruit you longed for is gone from you, and all things that were splendid and shining have passed away from you, and men will no longer find them. And the merchants of these things who became rich from her will stand at a distance because of the fear of her torment, crying and mourning, saying, woe, woe, the great city who is clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour such great wealth has been laid waste. And every shipmaster and every passenger and sailor, and as many as make their living by the sea, stood at a distance and were crying out as they saw the smoke of it burning, saying, what is like the great city? And they threw dust on their heads and were crying out, crying and mourning, saying, woe, woe to the great city in which all who have ships at sea became rich by her wealth. For in 1 hour she's been laid waste. Well, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, back to Jeremiah chapter 50. I point to you that there is reference in the New Testament to Babylon and a very violent destruction of it. We come back to Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 33. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, the sons of Israel are oppressed, the sons of Judah as well, and all who took them captive have held them fast. They have refused to let them go. The Redeemer is strong, and Yahweh of hosts is his name. He will vigorously plead their case so that he may bring relief to the earth, but turmoil to the inhabitants of Babylon. A sword against the Chaldeans, declares Yahweh. And against the inhabitants of Babylon, against her officials and her wise men, a sword against the oracle priest, they will become fools. A sword against her mighty men, they will be shattered. And a sword against their horses and against their chariots, against all the foreigners who are in the midst of her, and they will become women. Okay, ladies, don't take offense. You are women, and it's commendable. Nothing is as appalling as when men become women. Men are to be men, and women are to be women. You know, I did this morning during our lectures, CRD, I actually looked up I actually looked up in the Webster's 1828 dictionary the word sex, for the sake of our lecture. We were talking about how God took one, created in his image, and divided them into two sexes, two genders. And I wondered, how did they define sex in 1828? What did Webster's dictionary say of the word sex? Listen to this. The distinction between male and female, or the property or character by which an animal is male or female. The male sex is usually characterized by muscular strength, boldness, and firmness. The female sex is characterized by softness, sensibility, and modesty. Well, apparently you're not as wowed by that as me. I assure you, any dictionary you find today will not include any of that. You do a little, whatever, Wikipedia, you'll not find that. But that is the truth about men and women. And when God says, all the foreigners in the midst of her, and they will become women, that's not an insult to women. But men are not supposed to be women. Men are supposed to be strong and bold and courageous. Not all fainting and fearful. I'll move on. And verse 37 goes on to say, a sword against her treasures, and they will be plundered. A drought on her waters, and they will be dried up. For it is a land of graven images, and they are mad over terrifying idols. And therefore, the desert creatures will live there, along with the jackals. The ostriches will live in it. It will never again be lived in or dwelt in from generation to generation, as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah with his neighbors, declares Yahweh. No man will live there, nor will any son of man sojourn in it. It's an amazing thing. I say again that Saddam Hussein had this ambition of rebuilding it. What happened to that? Some of you participated in the stopping of that. Verse 41, behold, a people is coming from the north, and a great nation, and many kings will be aroused from the remote parts of the earth. They seize their bow and javelin. They are cruel and have no compassion. And their voice roars like the sea, and they ride on horses. Arranged like a man for the battle against you, O daughter of Babylon. The king of Babylon has heard the report about them, and his hands hang limp. Distress has taken hold of him, agony like a woman in childbirth. And by the way, Belshazzar, really, well, according to the book of Daniel, Belshazzar, when Babylon fell, the announcement, the handwriting on the wall, he had some, let me just say, he had physiological things happen, as is described here, to him from the fear. Distress has taken hold of him. Agony like a woman in childbirth. The old one will come up like a lion from the thicket of the Jordan to an enduring pasture. For in an instant I will make them run away from it, and whoever is chosen I will point over it. For who is like me, and who will summon me into a court? Who then is the shepherd who can stand before me? Therefore hear the counsel of Yahweh, which he has counseled against Babylon, and his purposes which he has purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely they will drag them off, even the little ones of the flock. Surely he will make their pasture desolate because of them. At the sound, Babylon has been seized. The earth is shaken, and an outcry is heard among the nations. That's the end of our study. We'll save chapter 51, which is more of that, for next study. Josh, please, come back. Give us a song. I say to you again, ladies and gentlemen, there is a degree to which the words that we just read were fulfilled But the conquest of Babylon by the Medo-Persian Empire under the leadership of King Cyrus, long ago, 539 BC. But there is another sense in which those words have not been fulfilled, and they will be yet ahead. Watch for it.
Hey, thanks for listening. We pray that the Word of God will speak to your heart as you meditate on it. If we can help you grow, or if you have any questions, you can visit us at our website at ccbangor.org. Give us a phone call at area code 207-991-9555, or you can shoot us an email at office@ccbangor.org. On behalf of Pastor Ken and all of us here at Calvary Chapel Central Maine, we wish you grace and peace.